Do you ever experience strong negative emotions that are especially hard to manage? Hi, I'm Trevor Peterson, professor and clinical psychologist. And in this video, I'm going to explain first how to correctly identify which of the three categories of emotions you're experiencing so that two, you can adjust the way you respond to them to be most effective. There's a key concept here. The way we respond to emotions needs to be adapted to the type that we're experiencing. It's kind of like in baseball, you don't swing the same way for every type of pitch. You would adjust the way you swing for, let's say, a curveball or a fastball. So to start off with, let's begin with explaining the three categories of emotion. So the first category of emotion is what we call natural emotions. So natural emotions are signals about things that are actually going on in our life. So they tend to be embedded with messages about needs that are met, unmet, or values that are honored or dishonored. And so they are important signals to alert us when there's something that we need to be healthy and happy. These can be physical needs, social needs, psychological needs. And as we satisfy these needs, we can experience what we call positive emotions, positive natural emotions. So these are emotions that come like a bell, ding, 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 ding. You just met an important need, a job, do it again. And then that message tends to go away, the emotion dissipates. Or they can come and say ding, 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 and communicate to us a negative emotion, meaning we have a deficit, we have an unmet need. And they'll send their message. If we listen to it and meet the need, they can go away. So there's something really critical here. If we listen to natural emotions and identify the need that they're communicating, we can then fulfill the need and the emotion will dissipate. This is powerful, right? There's so many emotions we experience that are very uncomfortable. They're designed to kind of shake us, to get our attention, and they will stick around sometimes and keep kind of knocking on the door of our heart until we open that door and let them in, listen to what they're telling us, and then act accordingly. So let me give you a few examples. Sadness. If we feel deep sadness and we get in tune with that, we may realize that this sadness is really communicating the moment. And what do you think is the need that's unmet there? Well, it would be a need for connection, right? To feel like we belong, for companionship. And so if we feel that sadness, we realize it's communicating loneliness, we identify the unmet need for connection, then we can do something about that. We can call a friend and go out to lunch. We can meet up with our neighbor and go on a walk. We can talk to our parents. And by doing one of these things, ideally in a deep way, that sense of loneliness and sadness will go away. And it'll be likely replaced by the emotion of joy, which can signal that, hey, you just fulfilled an important need, we'll feel energized, more positive, and we can move forward. And that loneliness is gone. So that's a very, what we call active problem-based coping, where we do something about the challenge that we're going through. Let's talk about another emotion, guilt, right? Very uncomfortable. There's also, if it's a natural emotion, there's a message embedded there. It may be telling us that our behavior is out of alignment with our values. And so there's an unmet need for integrity. And so if we can adjust our behavior, realign it with our values, then we can live in harmony again, feel centered, live with integrity, and that uncomfortable feeling of guilt can go away. We've effectively managed it. Take something like anger, right? A very intense emotion. What might it be communicating? Well, if it's a natural emotion, there's some unmet need. Often what's happening is we have a goal that we're wanting to achieve, something that matters to us, and we sense that something's blocking it, something's getting in the way. It can cause frustration, that can build into anger, and yet, if we listen to that, there's an unmet need to achieve this goal, to get around this blockage. And so if we're attentive to that, we can be proactive and we can use that energy from that anger to find a new way to meet that goal, to connect with a new resource, to talk with the person who's getting in the way and help them understand why this is important. And maybe then they'll be our support person. Be creative and energized to overcome. Anger can also be communicating injustice, and it may give us the energy to work hard, right, to overcome that injustice. So anger, guilt, sadness, all of these, what we typically call negative emotions, aren't actually bad. They're communicating important things about met or unmet, or in this case, typically deficits, unmet needs. And if we attend to them, they can be really informative and valuable, and they can empower us and they can improve our lives. They're kind of like the dashboard on our car, right? You may not want to put duct tape over all those signals on the dashboard just because they're uncomfortable. What would happen, right, if you did that? Probably you wouldn't realize when you're almost out of gas and you may get stranded on a rural highway. You may forget to change your oil and have engine damage. You may not know when it's time, to fix your engine. You may not know the positive things either, like you're getting excellent gas mileage. So these emotions that are natural are trying to communicate things to us that if we listen to are helpful. They'll keep us healthy and thriving. And we don't want to numb them, run away from them, ignore them. That is what we tend to do if we don't understand emotions. If we don't understand emotions, we have a tendency to think that they're scary or that they're useless, rational. And then we do. We tend to numb, run away, minimize, fight them off. But with this first category of emotions, natural emotions, we actually want to listen to them, understand the unmet need, and do something to fulfill it. And then they will go away. On the opposite end, emotions like joy, as I mentioned, come when we've satisfied a need. Then we want to pay attention to that so that we're able to achieve that need again in a balanced way. You don't necessarily want to get stuck on one of these positive emotions either. Why do you think that could be? I knew a guy who was out in the forest in the middle of the winter on meth, and he didn't have shoes on, wasn't wearing appropriate clothing, and that euphoria was blocking signals, or at least numbing signals, that his feet were freezing, and that he needed to do something about that need. But because of the blockage of that need being communicated, he didn't, and he ended up having to get some amputations done. So frostbite. So it is really important that we are careful and we're okay with emotions communicating when needs are met or unmet, and that we're flexible to the ups and downs of our emotions that communicate both sides of things. We need to know when we're meeting needs and when we're not meeting needs, and be adaptive to do what's required to fulfill those. And then if we do, right, we can experience joy on a regular basis, excitement on a regular basis, many of these positive emotions on a regular basis. They're not going to last forever. They're going to come, send their message, and go away. But they can happen throughout our day as we meet our need for connection, right? And I'm going to list off a few needs here. As we meet our needs for growth and development, joy might come. As we meet our needs for good structure and routine in our life, there may be some emotions that come, positive emotions that accompany that. As we meet our needs for contribution, right? Giving, helping. It's another psychological need we may not be aware of. As we meet our needs for variety and newness in our life, some zest, right? To enhance our life. As we meet our needs for agency, to have some choice and a sense of control over our life, for competence, right? To feel like we're skilled, esteem, to feel like we have value and worth. And we have all these psychological needs in addition to our physical needs, right? We're probably pretty aware of our physical needs for food, water, shelter, safety, brain and body breaks. But we have all these social, psychological, spiritual needs that are equally important, and then we'll also experience strong negative emotions when they're not met, to remind us to fulfill them. As we fulfill them, we feel satisfied, we feel content, we feel enriched, our life gets better, and those emotions no longer need to keep sending their signal. So that's the first type of emotion. The second category of emotions are manufactured emotions. These do not necessarily represent something that actually happened in our life. They are created by the way we are interpreting the world. And it may not be that we're choosing to interpret the world in that way. It may just be the thought that popped through our mind to explain a situation that occurred. But regardless, the distress that these manufactured emotions can become is a creation of an interpretation that passed through our mind. Meaning that if we were to look at the same situation from a very different perspective and interpret it, explain it differently, we would experience a completely different type of emotion or a different level of intensity. One way to think about this is with a thought record or an ABC chart, which I will draw out for you. But basically what you do here is that you consider first, okay, what's the actual situation that just happened to me objectively? Second, and that's what we call the A column, the antecedent or the situation that came before. Then we have the B column, which is our belief about it, how we are explaining it, how we are interpreting it, the hypothesis that we made about why that situation just occurred. And then based on that belief, that can lead to the C column, or a consequence of believing that about the situation, which can have an emotional component and a behavioral component. So it can make us feel things and make us want to do certain things, be kind of reactive. So if you take a simple situation like it's Saturday, you texted a friend, you wanted to hang out in the afternoon, and now it's 5 o'clock and they haven't texted you back. You can imagine with that situation, which objectively is something that occurred to you, there's a lot of ways to believe about that. And our brain has this negativity bias. It has this tendency to go to the most extreme, the most negative interpretation. So it might jump to the idea that, oh my goodness, I must have done something wrong, maybe offended them, upset at me. And we can start to believe that they don't like us anymore, that maybe we're not a good friend. And from there, you can start believing worse things, like maybe we're just not a good person, maybe no one likes us, maybe we're a reject, maybe we're a loser, maybe we're unlovable. That could be a core belief that could be derived from some negative automatic thoughts that kind of spiral out of control. And that's pretty extreme, right? Pretty catastrophic. But sometimes we believe that stuff because it's so threatening. We have this negativity bias to heighten our awareness of threat, to prepare us as survival value, but also that negativity bias can really convince us of things that just aren't true. Regardless, if we're believing that they don't like us anymore, we're a loser, we're unlovable, that will lead to a consequence. We will feel things if we're believing that is true. We'll feel, what would you say? We would probably feel distress, we probably feel sad, probably feel hopeless, discouraged, maybe even despair. And if you think about the intensity of that, it could be pretty high. From 0 to 100, maybe it's like 85, right? This intensity of like, I don't know if I'm even liked anymore. I don't know if I'm even lovable. I feel like a reject. And then based on that strong distress, it will probably affect our behavior. We might be a bit reactive. We might do something kind of drastic if we believe that's absolutely true. We could do something like blocking that friend off our phone, isolating, pulling away from society because we just don't want to be rejected again. It's too hurtful. And then if we do something like that, how do you think that would affect our original belief? We might believe it even more because now we're not having contact with people. So there's no one to say, hey, no, I actually like you. You're awesome. And we're further believing that our original belief that they don't like us anymore, we're a reject, we're unlovable is true. So that is the power of a manufactured emotion. It can lead to these strong emotional behavioral consequences, even if the belief is false. And so one simple way to respond differently to a manufactured emotion is to not believe it necessarily and go try and respond accordingly, but instead you want to challenge it and say, okay, it's possible that them not texting me back means they don't like me anymore, I'm a loser, and I'm rejected, lovable. It could mean something else. So let me first consider alternatives. What are other reasonable explanations for why someone may not text a person back for a few hours? And sometimes we're not able to do this on our own because we're so stuck in that first belief. So you could ask someone to help you, friend, family member, someone kind of objective or not wrapped up in that situation. Hopefully together or on your own, you can come up with some alternatives. Maybe that they were really busy. They were out in their yard working and they left their phone inside. Maybe, their battery ran out. Maybe they dropped it in the toilet. Maybe if you're a teenager, maybe they got grounded and their parents took the phone away, right? Maybe they thought they texted you back and it was actually just a draft and they forgot to submit it, push send. There's all these different things that could be reasonable explanations for why they didn't text you back. And so by doing that process, you start to cast some doubt on the first belief that the most extreme catastrophic thing is true. Maybe it's something a little less extreme. And when you entertain that, it'll often lower and change the emotion that was created from them. Instead of despair and hopelessness, you may feel some concern for your friend, some relief, and maybe just a little bit of frustration, but not, the anger or the despair. And maybe the intensity now of that emotion isn't, we say a 90, 85, 90, maybe now it's like a 40, right? And so instead of being in like hyper arousal, crisis mode, fight or flight mode, now you might be more in this moderate mode of optimal arousal, where you could think clearly, engage that prefrontal cortex, and make a good decision about how you want to respond based on your values, right? And so now you may decide, okay, I'm feeling a little calmer, a little more relief. I'm still a little concerned. I really value this friend. I don't want to lose this friendship. And I don't think it's really because they hate me. I'm sure something else would explain this, given the evidence that I've looked at and considered how reasonable these other explanations are, right? Hypothesis number one, we shouldn't believe that immediately. A good scientist is going to question that and look at alternative hypotheses and look at actual evidence. Now that we've done that, we can say, yeah, I think these other explanations are more reasonable. And from there, we can choose a behavior that's value-based. We can say, oh, this friend, let me check in. Maybe I'll drive over, I'm going to be passing their house when I go to the grocery store. Let me just drop by, see how they're doing. Maybe you get there and you think you're going to find out. Are they going to say, you're right, I hate your guts, you're a loser, never talk to me again? Or are you going to find out that one of these other alternative explanations was actually the reason? They were out in their yard busy, mowing and weed whacking, trying to get all their spring cleaning done. Or they, misplaced their phone and they couldn't even find it, and they've been frustrated all day. And they actually were really excited to spend time with you, but they couldn't find their phone and couldn't communicate with you, and they were kind of stranded. And so then you can help them find it, maybe, or some other reason, right? Probably it's not the most catastrophic extreme reason. It's probably something more reasonable. And so we want to withhold judgment of believing the worst case scenario to have looked at actual evidence, or we've just checked in and actually gotten direct feedback about what's going on instead of jumping to conclusions, believing the most extreme thing. So that's how we can manage manufactured emotions, is we can identify that we're having them, challenge them a bit, look at alternatives, and try to come up with the most reasonable explanation possible, which will dramatically, in some cases, change the emotional response and help us not be reactive behaviorally, but responding more of a reasonable, value-based. So the third category of emotions are false alarm emotions. It's kind of a term that I like to use for them because they aren't representing actual deficits or fulfillments in our life. They're not manufactured by how we're thinking or interpreting the situation. They are kind of the strong physiological sensation that we can experience sometimes and not even know why, right? Literally, I've had clients who 2 days ago, they were feeling great. Their life was good. And now they feel despair, darkness, depression, hopelessness. And when we talk about, has anything actually changed? Have you lost your job? Was there a rejection experience? Anything different happened between 2 days ago? Like there's nothing, right? There's no actual deficit or unmet need. It's this sometimes hormonal experience they're having, or in other cases, it's a past trauma or difficulty that's been triggered in the moment. They may not even know what triggered it, but all those old emotions associated with that old difficulty are washing back over them. And so this is sometimes a difficult one to detect, right? One of the ways you do this is you start by saying, okay, wait, is this an actual natural emotion? Is anything missing in my life? Is it a deficit? And if there's really nothing that's changed, and if there was no situation that you interpreted in an extreme way or catastrophic way that contributed or created these emotions, then you may say, well, maybe it is a false alarm. Maybe something from the past is being triggered. Maybe this is kind of a hormonal thing that's hitting me at this time of month. And then you want to consider what would be an effective way to respond. So while there's no actual need to meet here, that strategy can't be met, go satisfy a need. Since there's no situation that you interpret it in a certain way, to reinterpret, to reframe thought, do some thought restructuring with. In this case, what you really want to do is acknowledge what's going on. There's a false alarm, just like a fire alarm where there's no fire. You realize, okay, the alarm is going off and that's real and that's intense and that's uncomfortable. And yet there's no actual danger. I'm safe, I'm fine, I'm comfortable. Literally walk through this in your mind, talk to someone about it if that's helpful, and accept it, like let it be. And that can be really hard to do. Way easier said than done. And we'll talk later in videos about how to do that. But if you can accept it, that can allow you to let go of reacting to it, believing it, fighting it. You can try to let go of all those types of strong relationships with the emotion. Just accept, try to let it be. And if you can do that, kind of let go of the intensity of fixating and dwelling and ruminating on it, that maybe then can allow you to redirect that energy and attention to something different, right? That's of value, that's important to you, that will enhance your life. And that can be difficult to do, but there'll be videos in the future that talk about how to effectively, mindfully notice what's going on inside you, that it's not connected to reality. Yes, the emotion is real, but it's not communicating, a danger in your environment or a tragedy. And so you can let it be and redirect that energy and attention to actively engage your brain and body in something that will be rewarding and meaningful. And that can be often an effective way to deal with false alarm emotions, that third category. So hopefully that's helpful to think about, okay, 3 big categories of emotions. Which am I experiencing? Natural, manufactured, or false alarm? Try to think about how I can adjust the way I respond based on which type I'm experiencing First type, natural emotions, identify the unmet need, go try to meet it, be proactive about it. You don't want to just accept that emotion. You want to listen to it and then go do something about it. Second type, manufactured emotions, try to recognize, okay, what just happened to me? How did I interpret it? And how could I interpret it more reasonably? And how might that then change my emotional response and help me be more careful in my behavioral response? And then third, false alarm emotions, trying to identify that that is actually what's happening to you so that you can accept them, kind of let them be, and let go of it, redirect your attention and energy towards something that's happening against your life. All right, I hope that's helpful. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to sharing more next time.